Today I'm going to show you how I decorated this fishbowl cake. Come join me. So I put out a call on my social media pages for my watchers to give me ideas of what to decorate. One of my watchers suggested that I do a fishbowl cake. So that's why I'm doing this design. So I started with cutting my cakes into a shape of a fishbowl. Once I got a very, very general shape, I added some buttercream to my cake board, and I joined two cakes together and adhered them to the board. Then I went back and I started to carve the shape of the bowl on the sides of those cakes. Going back and looking at this video as I was editing, I know that I did not put enough of a carve into the side of these cakes, but I wasn't going for your traditional fully round cake. I was going for more of a square slash oval fishbowl shape. So in hindsight, there are things that I would do different, but I am quite happy with how this turned out. So after I got the general shape of what I was looking for, I started to cover this cake. So I added buttercream across the whole cake, and I started to work on smoothing out the buttercream icing. In between layers of icing, I was putting this into the freezer so that it would chill up so that I could work better with this cake. So then I went back and I cut more into the cake to get the shape that I was looking for. Then I realized that I wanted it to be a bit shorter. So you'll notice in a second that I do cut it a bit shorter from the top. So after I was cutting it, I was covering it again with buttercream, just really working to get this to be the shape that I wanted it to be. And here, as I mentioned, is where I'm cutting the top off. Now I'm cutting the bottom to get more of a rounded at the bottom of this fishbowl cake. And now covering the top where I'd cut off from the top. And just working to make sure that all of it is covered with the buttercream icing. So I had my crumb coat done basically, and then I went back and I wanted to get a bit of a thicker coat on this because I did have a lot of pieces of cake in my icing. So I wanted to go back and add an additional coat. You'll notice that even after I did this coat, I still have a lot of pieces of cake in it. So I will add another coat of icing. So as I'm adding this icing, you'll ultimately notice that I end up with a shape that's not quite what I wanted. And it really comes down to there being a lot of icing onto this cake. So I should have done more shaping of the cake, but as I mentioned, I am happy with how this turned out. There's just some things that I would have changed if I had the opportunity to do this again. Now I'm going back and I'm adding the blue icing to the bottom of this cake to represent the water. As I mentioned, you can see on the top that there are still some pieces of cake in the top part of the icing. So I'm trying to go through here and get a pretty straight line for the bottom part of the icing to show as the water of the fishbowl. There I am, just trying to straighten up that line. Now I'm going and I'm working on some of the elements that will go onto the cake for decoration. These are going to be little bubbles that will go onto the cake. This is pieces of white fondant. I did have some help making some of the elements of this cake. So here we are making some fish out of fondant using molds. Also some shells that will go along the sides of the cake. And also some pieces of, I guess, algae, all for the decoration of the outside of the cake. And once those are being pressed into the fondant, then they're being cut out using a little knife to go along the edges of those pieces of fondant. Then we went on to make some seaweed out of different colors of green. So just cutting some strips and then twisting them. They'll be put along the sides of the cake as well. So after that, I went back and I wanted to cover up those pieces of cake that were showing through. So I'm putting on that final coat of icing onto the top of the cake. So to get along the sides of that cake, I went back and I'm using a piece of parchment paper to cover the blue to make sure that I'm not getting the white icing onto the blue water of my cake, and just kind of going along that parchment paper. And then I'm just going to go back and I'm going to clean up that icing to smooth it out. And then what I wanted to do was do a little bit of a blend and a blur along those two sides, because there is a reflection that happens when you see a fishbowl. So I didn't want it to be exactly crisp along that edge. And then I just started to put those pieces that were made by myself and my help onto the cake. So you can see me doing that here. So I'm adding the fish and the seaweed and the algae and the shells and the bubbles. And here it's coming together, our fishbowl cake. And with that, this is what the cake looked like when it was finished. And I'm just going to show a few pictures of what that looked like from each of the angles. If you enjoyed watching this video, I encourage you to come to my channel and like, comment, and share. I also would love if you would subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any future content as I'm posting it. I do appreciate you watching this video. I would love, love, love if you would come and watch other content. Thank you so much for joining us.